All right, so we have Hindenburg Research that just came out with a big report in this past week about Carvana, and the title of this thing is this is very funny to me. Carvana, a father-son accounting grift for the ages. Now, all the stuff I'm going to be talking about today in this video is all coming from their research, and then I'm going to add on my opinions on top of the things that they found. And in no way is this any kind of financial advice. And I can tell you, I'm a used car dealer. If you're taking financial advice from a used car dealer like myself, you probably need to rethink all the decisions that you've made leading up until this point. So let's just go over some of the allegations first that they found. Accounting manipulation is one of the big things that they really hone in on this, and this is just this creative accounting we've been talking about a lot with Carvana. And one of the things that I want to really pick out before we go into this data is that in a few quarters ago, they were actually saying that they were able to make $7,200 per vehicle sold. And just to give you a standpoint of really where maybe one of their competitors is going to be, CarMax, which has a very similar model. They're more concrete store based, although their online sales are increasing, but they run a similar model. They buy cars from consumers and then they resell them on a retail front to consumers. They make about $2,300 per vehicle. And then just to bring it back into what I do as a used car dealer, I'm a small used car dealer. Obviously, I can't compare myself to them, but just to show you what I make per car, we average right at $1,200 per car. So Carvana up here is saying that they make $7,200 per car. CarMax, $2,300 per car. Me, small used car dealer, $1,200 per car. So something is not lining up. And this is what Hindenburg is really digging into to see. Now, Hindenburg is they're a research firm that is a notorious short seller. And what that means is that they look for stocks that, in their opinion, feel like are very overvalued or that can potentially cook the numbers a little bit. And they anticipate that the stock price is going to go down. So they bet on that the stock price is going to go down. They release these reports. And in a lot of cases, whenever they release one of these reports, the stock actually goes down. So this is something that they release to help them just give full disclosure. They're going to be betting against Carvana in this sense. And they release this report, and it helps their position because when they release these short reports, the stock typically will go down, which makes them money. But we'll read really just an overview, and then I'll dissect into some of these numbers, some of these things that they've actually found. They accuse them of using accounting tricks and lax underwriting to inflate reported income. They have undisclosed related party transactions, $800 million in loan sales to a suspected undisclosed related party. This is one of Carvana's biggest pieces of their business. Yeah, they're a used car dealer, but the biggest place where they make their money, and Hindenburg talks about this, is they're not really a used car dealer. They're a loan origination place, and they use this to sell. They package a lot of their loans together, and then they sell them off. And in a large portion, they have recently sold a lot of these loans to Ally Bank, and Ally has recently come out and said that they're going to pull back on some of their automotive lending. And because of this, they pull back from buying some of Carvana's loans. And now Carvana has sold a lot of loans, and they say in this transaction, $800 million worth to an undisclosed party. But Hindenburg is saying that it's a related party. When I talk about related party, that means maybe someone who is close to the CEO, maybe someone who is tied up or has a interest in Carvana, the company. So if they're able to package these loans together, then maybe they're getting favorable deals from this party that they're selling them to. But the big thing is that, okay, a lot of these loans that were written were not good loans. So they're trying to find a place to unload them. And this separate party, which is buying them, maybe they shouldn't be buying these loans, but because they have some kind of vested interest in Carvana succeeding or in Carvana's stock price going up is probably the bigger reason. Then this doesn't look very good, at least for shareholders. And insider stock sales. This is a biggie. So Ernest Garcia II, who is the father of the CEO of Carvana right now, he has sold tons and tons and tons of stock in the form of, I believe, billions. Yeah, $3.6 billion. And I want to pull up Carvana's stock chart over the last 5 years because I want to show you, if you were to look, and let me make myself smaller. If you were to ever look, this is a 5-year chart. If you wanted to see what a pump and dump scheme in the stock market, their stock chart would look like, this is exactly what it would look like. So we had this big pump up and it went all the way at 2021. This is when everything went to the moon. And then the stock market got smart. We had some bad news come out. We had the car market, which peaked around this time. We had a purchase of ADESA at the time. We had lots of debt that Carvana was taking on. And you see it all cratered down. And in this valley right here, this is where there were big speculation and big bets that Carvana was actually going to go bankrupt. And then we go through this time where, okay, you see their stock going back up because they started to show these insane profits per vehicle. They started to show that they could sell off some of these loans. And really what Hindenburg is pointing out, and one of the most important things that they talk about in this report, is that, okay, a lot of these sales were able to happen. A lot of this was front loaded because they were writing loans to anyone and everyone. And actually what they said was lax underwriting standards. So they interviewed a former director, and he claimed that 100% loan approval rates leading to high risk loan portfolio. And I would say I would probably disagree with. I would guess that that's probably an over exaggeration because there's no way they're writing 100% of loans. But what I have seen is that their requirements were that someone was 18 years old. They have not filed bankruptcy, and they make at least $5,100 a year. So you have this consumer, that walks in that should not get this approval. And what does Carvana do? Okay, well, how old are you? Well, are you at least 18? Well, I'm 18 and a half. And then, okay. Well, do you have a job? Yeah, I work at GameStop. and well, how much do you make? Well, I make about $6,000 a year. You know what? We think you deserve this $20,000 to $25,000 car. And a lot of these cases were happening in Carvana. They're happening right now, where if you, like Ray from Car Edge likes to say, if you can fog a mirror, then you get a loan. And this looks very similar to what happened in 2007, 2006, leading up to the financial crisis, where, okay, if you have income, you have a job, and you haven't filed bankruptcy, you can get a house. It's happening on a much smaller scale because we're talking about one company here, but this is a setup for disaster. But this is how you can have this kind of pump and dump kind of element that happens with a stock like this, because so many of these sales that are actually happening, they're happening because these consumers aren't going anywhere else. And it might look really, really good for the numbers right now. And it really does, because Carvana is able to show some sales when the rest of the car market is stagnant to not doing very well. And Carvana is really hitting the cover off the ball. But as time goes on, these loans will start to go bad, because that kid, that 18 and a half year old that works at GameStop that makes $6,000 a year, well, pretty soon he might make one or two payments, but it's going to come where he's not going to be able to make those payments on a consistent basis. And one of the things that they pointed out in this report is that loan extensions were a thing, and it said that significant increase in borrower extension potentially masking true delinquency rates. We know right now that the car market is at the highest point of delinquency rate that we have ever seen. This is even greater than 2008 when everything went. When everything basically went to zero. Housing prices got cut in half. When people had no money, they weren't spending any money. It was the worst of the worst of the worst times for our economy. Right now, the delinquency rate is higher than it was then, and this is very interesting to point out. And this is why this report, I like that they really define this, because loan extensions is a way for your repo rates not to go up at an alarming rate. If you just continue to allow consumers to just miss payments. So I can tell you, if you want to get a loan and your credit's bad and you want to have a car and not necessarily make the payments, it seems like Carvana is the place for you to go. And that's what Hindenburg is pointing out right here. And I want to go. We can talk about some operational challenges too. This is another thing that Hindenburg pointed out, but one aspect of it where I actually disagree with them a little bit. But their operational challenges are stated that declining used vehicle prices have dropped 20% over the past 3 years. I know a lot of you out there saying, "Well, I'm not seeing anywhere." I get comments all the time. Prices are not dropping. But here it is. The prices have dropped. Over the last 3 years, used car prices have dropped. They're still astronomical. Don't get me wrong. But that's a video for another day. But prices dropping, I think, is not necessarily an operational headwind. I think it's a tailwind for CarMax, for Carvana, for used car dealers like myself, because as prices come down, we can adjust with the market. Just because our used vehicle prices come down on the retail and wholesale side doesn't mean we're making necessarily any less money. It's a moving target. So you'll have a company like Carvana and CarMax who buy vehicles from consumers. So if you have retail prices that are up here and they're coming down by 20% over 3 years, it's not costing them the same amount of money to buy these same cars. It's a moving target. So as the retail prices come down, the amounts that they're having to pay for their cars also go down. So I think this is actually a net positive for Carvana and not necessarily a headwind like Hindenburg research is talking about. And really, if you have lower prices, you have velocity of money that moves through the car market more because new car dealers can sell more vehicles. They can get more trade-ins, and then they can sell more of those trade-ins at auction, which is where Carvana can pick up a lot of their cars also. So it's prices coming down overall just helps everyone. And really, I feel like as prices can come down and Carvana will pay less for their cars, they actually, over time, they can do better. Now, here's the where it could hurt a company like Carvana, CarMax, a lot of these franchise dealers that are holding more expensive used vehicles, is if they sit. And we've seen that if Carvana is writing loans to anyone and everyone, their cars probably aren't going to sit. They're going to turn them over. The problem is not them selling the cars. The problem is what happens to these cars after they're sold, right? So if they're able to package these loans and send them off to a bank like Ally, who has been cutting back on how much they've been buying from Carvana, then it's not Carvana's problem anymore. So if they can package all these loans and get rid of all of them, then it's good for them. But that's not going to be the case. Carvana is going to hold a lot of these loans, and pretty soon, probably not too much in the distant future, it's going to be that Carvana is not able to package a lot of these loans and sell them off unless like what this article is saying is that they have a party that is invested in some way towards into Carvana themselves, into the family that's running Carvana. And that's where the shadiness can kind of creep in. So just talking about Ally Financial. So their dependence on Ally Financial. Let's talk about that. So they sold $3.6 billion in vehicle loans to Ally in 2023, and that's 60% of their total origination. So Ally was if Carvana is a finance company, a financing origination company, and not a used car dealer, then 60% of their entire business goes to Ally. And Ally has been scaling back on purchases because of the risk of the loans that they're taking in. And this is just another nod to Carvana writing loans that maybe they should not be writing. And if Ally is saying, okay, our auto loan book is getting too sketchy, then a lot of their auto loan book is originating in from Carvana writing these loans that they shouldn't have written. And the debt load is huge. That's one of the big overviews that I actually skipped over in the beginning. But they have a $4.8 billion in net debt. And from the bond market, that's where a lot of their debt's going to come from. They're rated a junk, basically. So on the bond market, you have all this credit that switches hands, and bond investors are way smarter than than stock market investors. You don't they're sold in large sums, and the thing about the bond market is they're going to see through a lot of this. Let's call it some of this BS, in my opinion, a lot of this BS before the stock market's going to. And the bond market has already rated the credit, their bonds from Carvana at a junk rating. So they know this in the bond market. Let's just put it that way. But to go along with the debt, one thing where a lot of their debt had come from just 2 years ago is when they bought ADESA. ADESA is I believe the second largest auction in the country, behind Mannheim, and they have tons and tons of locations across the U.S. And one big thing with ADESA is that whenever Carvana bought ADESA, they actually lost a lot of business because Carvana is directly competing with franchise dealers. Franchise dealers see Carvana as the enemy. They don't want this online sell model to work because franchise dealers, the way they make their money is from consumers coming to each individual one of their franchises and buying vehicles from them. There's no large internet model that's going to work for them because Ford doesn't just sell directly to consumers. You have a dealership in almost every town across the U.S., in every city for consumers to go to. So dealerships, big dealerships, do not want Carvana's model to work because it's really taking sales away from them. And a lot of these franchise dealers, they sell newer used vehicles too. So whenever Carvana bought ADESA, a lot of these franchise dealers pulled their trade-ins out of ADESA. And I remember when I was going there and this happened, that you could see the amount of vehicles go down. And whenever the way the auctions make money is from the buy and the sell side. So every time a transaction happens, they get a fee from the buyer, they get a fee from the seller. And if you have fewer vehicles, then they're just going to be fewer fees that these auctions are able to get. So they're just going to make less money. So I would anticipate that right after they bought ADESA, they bought ADESA at the top of the market too, by the way, that things started to go south for ADESA. And I would imagine that right now ADESA is probably a pretty big cash burn for them. Now, one thing that ADESA does add for them is that they're able to run cars through the auction that they want to get rid of. This is another thing that I'm not sure if it was in this report. I might have read it somewhere else, but there's been reports that Drive Time, which is, I believe, owned by the CEO of Carvana's father, they are buying cars from Carvana also. And what this can do is actually inflate the price of what Carvana can get for their cars, because of Drive Time just like, okay, if it's Carvana car, pay whatever it brings. Then that can artificially inflate a lot of prices. And I can tell you from the used car dealer side of things, that's a very, very frustrating thing to hear, because I go to these auctions. Other dealers just like me go to these auctions. And if you have two companies that are working together to run up their own prices, that's a nightmare for an auction, because we're trying to go. I mean, we're bidding against other car dealers, but we're bidding against other car dealers that have to sell at a certain price. whenever we go to auction, there's only a certain number we can pay for a particular car because the retail value on it is a certain price. And if you have companies going in there that will pay at just the moon, it doesn't matter because they're just trying to inflate certain prices. Then all of those wholesale averages, all of those prices that we have to pay to be able to actually sell a car at retail, none of that matters anymore because they're just going to pay whatever the car brings. And it's very frustrating when you see companies do this. And this is not the first time this has happened in an auction, but every time it's equally as frustrating. And if you have large companies doing it, it's even more so because it's going to be more widespread because ADESA has a lot of auctions. Drive Time has a lot of locations, and Carvana has a lot of cars. So this can disrupt a big portion of the used car market just from these two companies really colluding whenever you're talking about buyers and sellers at auction. And there was one more thing that I know I wanted to hit: declining sales prices. Selling stock. Yeah. So this is this is fun. Well, let's go back to the stock chart right here. So talking about pump and dump and what happens let's see, the father is like it's like a mafia kind of thing. Actually, you know what? It's similar to that, I guess. Sold 3.6 billion between August 2020 and August 21. And you see that's with this astronomical rise, right? And additional 1.4 billion in 2024. So he sold a bunch of stock all along through here, and then he waited and started selling some stock all along in here. So this is where you can see where this looks very, very weird, where you have this astronomical rise from numbers that, from what Hindenburg says, look very, very off from what I am saying. $7,200 per car, that it looks weird, right? In my opinion, this looks weird. And then you have a similar situation of what happened before, and now you have this big peak that has recently happened in the stock, and now we're starting to sell off again. Looks oddly familiar, and I fear for shareholders that are in the stock now. All this, like I said, my opinion. If you're taking advice from a used car dealer, don't. This has not been meant to be any kind of financial advice. Thank you guys for watching this. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and let me know if what you think down in the comments. And end it.